staff on that issue.
Operations like Airbnb, very hard for us to rate even as businesses, let alone with an accommodation sector targeted rate.
Yeah.
When we want to strike a rate on someone, we need to be able to have something tangible to do it on. So some of the smaller operators who only operate on a temporary basis, where they don't have a clear part of their property used for business purposes or to provide accommodation, we don't have a tangible basis on which to rate them. It would be unfair for us to say, well, you're using your kitchen for a business purpose, or your son's bedroom while he's away on the holidays for Airbnb, to try and rate them on that. A bit difficult. We reported to the council on this in October last year in relation to concerns expressed by the Motel Association. So there would be some providers that we wouldn't be able to rate. However, there's the great proportion still of the accommodation provided to guests in Auckland does come from the formal sector.
Can I just
80 to 90%.
add to that briefly? I met with Airbnb a fortnight ago, and I raised the same question, Councillor, as you've just raised, and not only in relation to a visitor levy, but in relation to whether people providing Airbnb actually pay any income tax on it. And they said, in fact, their electronic records are very clear and made public, because there's a review of everybody that provides the service, what the guest felt about it, what the accommodation provider felt about the guest. So there is a way of tracing Airbnb if indeed that sector grows stronger, as I would expect it to. So it may not be impossible, but you can't totally prevent leakage, but we would be aiming to get the vast bulk of the mainstream providers.
Okay, so that addresses my first question, because I really like the idea, I have to say. I'd like to see us being able to target that industry. My second question relates to the issue which I don't think has been raised here, but it is going to come up very soon, and that's in the renewal space with respect to transport. Because it seems to me, and maybe the officers could confirm this, that the risk of the current projection is a future program for renewals and transport. And I'm wanting to know what is the work that we're currently doing to identify the potential growing backlog in transport renewals, which is going to crystallise probably in 2018 with the long-term plan, but frankly, given the state of some of those current roads, I would imagine that the renewals program is already under pressure. And are we going to be able to address that through this current annual plan round, given this particular budget proposal?
Councillor Newman, can I just park up on that one? We've got the Mayor only here for 10 more minutes. We can come back to that. Have you got any further questions that may relate to the Mayor providing an answer? Well,
the other question I had is the consequential, possible unintended consequence of a targeted land rate. I support the land rate as well, but there are unintended consequences there, and maybe we can talk about that.
The detail.
Appreciate
in
that.
detail later.
Yep.
So how's
okay,
that?
right. So I have Councillor Walker, Cashmore, Wayne Walker, Simpson and Kaki. Is there anyone that's got specific questions of the Mayor? John, are yours just general questions or?
Well, it's just a statement to endorse what the Mayor's trying to do.
Okay.
I'd like to consider that the hoteliers don't worry about when a major event comes to New Zealand putting the rates up. As with the Ibis Hotel, it's gone from $110 to $700 for the New Zealand Games, Masters Games. So I mean,
yeah.
Thank you. I couldn't have said that better myself, Councillor Walker. And you know, I thought it was a bit rich for the industry to say that we were picking on one particular sector. They are quite happy for the ratepayer to meet the cost. And they are not even meeting the cost themselves under the visitor levy. It's the visitor that meets it. And when you have an event like the Masters Games, you see those accommodation costs go sky high. That's how the market works. And that seemed to be perfectly appropriate. And the increase in costs for the Masters Games, because of the pressure on accommodation, would be I don't know, they'd be 50 times higher than the cost that we're talking about in putting on this visitor levy, which would be a pretty modest sum, maybe $6 to $10. But point well made.
Councillor Wayne Walker, relevant to the Mayor, because we can come back to you, Wayne.
Sure. Just got a couple of questions. First off goes to the growth infrastructure targeted rate. And I see the mention as focusing on greenfield areas, but if we look at other cities, and you've referenced, our doing what other cities do, they use growth infrastructure targeted rate, particularly to fund transport projects that are catchment based, extensions to the London Underground. Our light rail could fit in that category. It's too late now for the CRL. It's not fair just to apply a tool like that to greenfield areas and not apply it to other areas where significant amounts of expenditure are occurring. And if anything, much of the uplift is in the brownfield areas, the existing areas.
Yep.
So that's one question.
I'll ask officials to comment on this, but I think the point that you've made is a reasonable one. That there'll be instances where brownfields might be drawn into it, but the particular pressure on providing all of the new infrastructure comes in the area of greenfield, and in some areas greenfield is particularly expensive to develop, and the developers would probably be quite happy that it's particularly expensive if they don't have to pick up the bill, but the council has to. So I see greenfields as a focus, but I'm not sure that we've ruled out brownfields in this. But Matthew, are you the right person to comment on that?
Yeah, happy to. So through the chair, look, you're quite right. The greenfield elements at the moment is probably just reflecting the focus after the Transport for Urban Growth work, dimensioning the cost and size of those projects. The other thing I would say is just very important. So there's nothing that we would, and it's in the proposal, in a housekeeping sense, what we need to give effect to through the consultation is adjusting our revenue and financing policy, in particular so that we can use targeted rates across water and wastewater infrastructure. So with that in place, we then enable council to have targeted rates across all sorts of infrastructure in any part of the city. So there's no suggestion that that we can't do that.
I guess my concern is that brownfields areas are getting billions of dollars, literally mega billions of dollars.
Sorry, just
okay, that's fine.
The second question is for the
Mayor
Mayor
other
as well.
question just goes around the issue that Councillor Fletcher raised around parks and funding parks. Are you considering looking at financial contributions? Right now, we only get about $7,000 of property. Under the Reserves Act, currently, it would be $50,000 property. So we've got a major structural problem there that limits the money that we've got, not just for parks, but also the spending on those parks in terms of development. It's a massive structural problem.
Yeah. I haven't put my mind to that, but my attention's been drawn to the fact that there may be some legislative barriers to us proceeding in that direction. But happy to look at it. I've got an open mind across the board on how we can equitably raise that money. And I am, as I said to Councillor Fletcher, conscious of the fact that these are among the resources that are put under real pressure with tourism, and we need to be able to maintain the quality of the experience of visiting the park.
Yeah. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Your Worship, you campaigned quite strongly on your 2.5 average rates increase, the living wage, and doing something about homelessness. But you also campaigned on the savings of 3 to 6% across the council family. And I just want to ask you whether you believe that your proposal will actually deliver on that campaign promise.
I absolutely intend to, and as I suggested beforehand, we will lead by example in the Mayor's office in delivering that level of savings in our budget. But we are expecting, and Council was already in the process of looking at finding those efficiencies. I said during the campaign that if we want to restore the trust and confidence in Council, we have to ensure that we are getting value for money in everything we do, and before there's a significant proposal put up for expenditure, including by the CCOs, there needs to be a business case that supports that. But I am looking for across-the-board efficiencies and savings as part of the wider platform. Actually, when we go to government, as you will understand, the first thing the Minister of Finance is going to ask me this afternoon, are you putting your own house in order? And we need to demonstrate that we are finding that efficiencies and not simply going to government and saying more, more, more. That was my experience over 15 years of budget rounds as a minister. I had to show the savings that I was making and that I was getting my own house in order, and we have to do exactly the same in regard to council when we approach central government for the additional funding that we need.
Mr Chairman, I'll keep my other questions for later. Thank you.
Okay, I think, Councillor Cashmore, you're on the list there, but I presume you could also ask him the question in the card. So I'm going to go to Member
My
Kake.
question's to the
Car,
staff.
Mr Chairman, we're walking to save money.
Even better.
Member Kake.
Kia ora. My question, first of all, is just to commend the intent to consult, and I note your June deadline to have this all wrapped up. Can you give me a sense of confidence that Māori or iwi will be included in the consultation? So I need a sense of confidence that is part of it. You didn't mention through your fairness, stability, collaboration, you mentioned central government as a key partner, business and community. Are we included in the community or
I'd be in
you know
real
my
trouble
question.
I'd be in real trouble if I excluded you from being part of the community. And yes, it would be our
I
intention
thought we
to
were a
work.
little bit different. Actually.
Yeah. We'll be working closely with you, and that's why you're sitting around the table, so that we ensure that happens. And you will be on our back to tell us where we need to consult and who we need to consult with. But in a lot of the areas that I'm talking about, there is particular reference to Maori, because we know, for example, in the statistics of the homelessness, Maori are hugely disproportionately represented. So I'm sure you'll be working in partnership with us on that.
Yeah. So it's really just an indication of a steer to the consultation process to the officers when they do roll this out, please.
Yeah, no, we're certainly intending, we're consulting broadly right across the community, but the role of the IMSB on this board is to ensure that consultation takes place with the relevant communities within Māoridom, so that we'll be working with you to do that.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. The question is to you, Mr Mayor. So when your staff were looking at the living wage proposal, I did send information that our HR staff had been doing, the CEO's great work on the social equity principle, which you've acknowledged in your report is very good work. The fact that those lower bands have had a 13% increase over the last 3 years, and our high bands have only had about 1 or 2, and that's why we're losing some pretty good staff. And what I wanted to know is, did you factor in the flow-on effects of having to do this? For example, we've been told that our events program, which is mostly staffed by students, university students over the holidays, that will mean that cost of putting on those free events is a lot more expensive, and some of those may be at risk. Also, it means we won't be able to employ university students over the weekend, over the holidays, which is a really good opportunity for our students to get income but also get experience in a big organisation. So that's one of the things. The other ones I wanted to ask is, have your staff investigated the flow-on effects of increasing some of these wages, where we know that 40% of people in New Zealand don't pay tax because they have working for families, and effectively that negates their their need to pay tax. That how many people of these people that you're going to be giving an extra wage will then not be eligible for working for families? So, and this is some of the things that we traversed last time we looked at this, but I don't see anything about that, and I think it's a nice thing to do sometimes, but have your staff and you considered the flow-on effects, or are we just giving them a problem that you know you're trading off one thing for another? It looks good for you to do, and you promised it, but I don't know whether there was enough investigation before the promise happened. So that's the question I'm asking, Mr Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Cooper. I'm not doing this because it looks good. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do. But your questions are valid questions. The flow-on effects, We have built that in. The figures, because we'd had a discussion at an earlier meeting where you thought the figures were lower than the figures that I've been given.
I didn't have
Yeah.
the CCOs in there because
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
talk about council.
Okay,
That
yeah,
was
no,
your
no.
discrepancy.
Yeah, it's
You weren't
so it
incorrect.
is the council and the CCOs, and it relates to about 2,100 with a flow on to about 1,100, because obviously if you've got two people working alongside each other and one has responsibility, supervisory
clear about that.
roles, etc., you have to deal with that. So we've calculated that, and that is built in as part of the price. I'm not sure why that would disadvantage in any way where the worker came from, or whether the worker was a university student or from anywhere else.